Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and also please check out the comments and the description below. Many times I put a lot more information about what I am talking about in the video. Also, if I feel like there's things that I wanted to add that I did not talk about during it, it'll be in there, so check it out. On the right I have the Mono Audio Bronze 500 tower speaker. On the left I have the KEF Q950 tower speaker. These speakers have some similarities, and yet they're also very different, so I'm going to try to compare the two of them as best as I can for you. First of all, the exterior of this, it does have a nice looking exterior. This has the kind of the fake woodish look, or whatever it is, and in the back this has two ports, and it has binding posts, so you could do a bi-amp of it. So there's two sets. With this speaker, and I'm not going to turn it around, this speaker only has one set of binding posts, so you can't do a bi-amp on it. And the exterior on it also looks nice. It's pretty much solid white. It just kind of has some like fine lines in it, so it's nothing too special. I'm guessing that they probably spent most of the money on the actual speaker components whereas over here, I'm sure that a good amount of money went to the exterior as well. Both of these speakers are a 2.5 way. With a 2.5 way, it's a 2-way with an extra driver that's filtered. So let me just kind of explain that quickly. So on a 2-way, what they would do is send frequencies down to the woofer and split it from the tweeter. So let's just say it's at 2.5 kilohertz where they split it. All the high frequencies and treble go here. All the mid-range and bass is going down here. Now with a half frequency, what they do is they filter out the upper frequencies so that only lower frequencies are sent to another driver. So typically to like reinforce things. So to add some additional bass, rather than have mid-range in this woofer driver as well, this one has mostly upper bass and all the lower bass, whereas this one has all the mid-range plus the upper and lower bass. So the same thing applies over here, but over here only this woofer is powered from your receiver, and this is the half and the 2.5, and this woofer is also powered from your receiver as well. Whereas this one, these two woofers are both powered, and of course the tweeter is powered, and the tweeter is in there, which is powered. These two are a passive radiator. So a passive radiator is pretty much, just picture it like a cone that's put in there, a driver that's put in there. It's not connected to anything, it's totally dead. The only way it moves is when the woofer that is powered moves. Okay, so when this woofer moves, it causes these two to move as well. These two don't move nearly as much as this does, because these two are kind of just catching the wave, it's catching the air pressure, the change in there, which is what's moving these, okay? Whereas this speaker in the back has these two that are powered, but it has the two rear ports that are in the rear. Okay, now this is where it's going to get really complicated, because this has this nice looking gold tweeter in here, okay? So this tweeter with this type of mesh looking front that they have kind of takes the sound and kind of spreads it out, okay? So it doesn't have a sound where like it's kind of like coming straight at you. This tweeter definitely has more of a wide sound, a fanned out sound. Now this tweeter, which is right over here, this tweeter also has a pretty wide sound. Actually, this whole speaker has a wide sound, because the mid-range is also in here. So this is the tweeter, this is the mid-range, and this is also bass. So this is all three. This section here is actually sectioned off. So inside, if you look at some of the pictures of this online, you'll see that this is in its own enclosure on the inside, okay? So these three are in their own enclosure. All right, so With that said, the sound that comes from this is very even. I find it to be very even. I find this to be more of a typical sound, with the exception of this tweeter being a little bit wider and more fanned out. But as far as listening to it goes, when I'm listening to the monitor, it has and I don't want to say this, I don't want to say it wrong, it sounds like the voices are coming out of this. The voices coming from here sound very large, and it sounds very even. So it kind of sounds like the whole speaker is sending them out. Sometimes the voices, quite possibly because they're so clear, kind of have a bit of an edge on them. I find that there's a little bit of it's kind of hard to explain, but the voices sound maybe a little bit sharper than they should sometimes, but they are very clear. The voices coming out of this are also very clear, but this speaker is, I would say, somewhere from neutral to maybe neutral to a little bit warmish, whereas this speaker is a much brighter sounding speaker. It's a much cooler sounding speaker. It's a much more detailed sounding speaker. So I'm going to say this speaker has more details than what I hear coming out of this. Now, it's not to say that this is a bad speaker or that it sounds bad, because it doesn't. And it's not to say that this speaker sounds bad as well, because I don't think that this one sounds bad either. They're just different. This speaker's price is normally $1,000 each without any sale. This one, I believe, is about $750 or so without any sale normally. You could find this for I've seen this, I believe, $650 or less. I think $600 or so. This one, I think, has hit as low as, I think I've seen it around $850, but not in white. White seems to be much harder to get. I've seen it in the black and in the brownish color on that type of a sale. So just keep that type of a price in mind, because if you're considering a speaker with an 8-inch woofer because you want some extra bass, there is a significant price difference. So it's quite possible that you might want to start off with something like this and see how it sounds, and if you don't like it, try this, or potentially try both at the same time and see which speaker is best for you. With this one, I would pair it with an amplifier that is on the warm side. I also like this speaker better when it's placed in a corner. So if you have a room where there's two corners and you can put the speaker in that corner, put it in there. I think it sounds so much better. And also, if the room has carpeting, much better than a room like this, which is all tile. It's a live room. It's an echo chamber. With the grill on this speaker, okay, because this one doesn't come with the grill, you got to buy it separately, but this one you could just pop the grill on. Oh, get my finger out of the way. So that's how the grill goes on, and I think that with the grill on, I think that it helps to take some of that edge off of the treble that I've experienced. With this speaker, I think that the tweeter, the mid-range, is very even. I don't hear anything on this speaker where I'm saying it's a little too much. Sometimes with this, especially in a room like I'm in right now, where there's a lot of echo, this speaker can be, I think, a little bit too overpowering coming from the tweeter. Sometimes, okay? The tweeter is just, I think it's just a little too strong for these two woofers, but I only ran this with 120 watts and 125 watts using the Onkyo RZ840 receiver and the Marantz 7013. I liked it better on the Marantz. The Marantz is just a little bit warmer, and the sound of the Marantz is a little bit more, how do I explain this? The sounds, the extreme sounds, it seems like it has better depth, the Marantz, than the Onkyo. So I guess like the overall depth of the sound. So from the lowest sounds to the loudest sounds, the range is a little bit wider on the Marantz. With the Kef, I don't really have a preference to it. I think possibly in a room like this, I preferred it a little bit more. I think in a room that's a little bit more wide, so if your room has a lot of wood floors, tile floors, anything like that, I think, the Kef might be a better choice. It might be a better choice. Because again, this tweeter, at least to my ears, maybe not to your ears, but to my ears, sometimes I found this tweeter to be just maybe a little bit too much. So let's talk about the bass in general, because again, these two 8-inch woofers are powered, and this 8-inch and this 8-inch are powered. They're close, they're pretty close. I think, and this speaker is rated lower than this speaker. So it is rated a little bit lower. I do think that this speaker brings out some of the lower bass in music. So for example, the band Korn. Korn uses a lot of bass. Sometimes it's like that boom, that thud sound that comes out in Korn. This does a good job with it. This also makes the bass guitar sound amazing. Anything that I listened to where there was some kind of a bass guitar that the recording was halfway decent, sounds great on this. That ping, 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 ping sound coming from the bass, I mean, it really sounds good. On this, I mean, I could hear it. It sounded good, but the bass guitar just sounds better on this. If this is placed in a corner, I'm gonna say yeah. I like it much better in the corner. I like the bass a lot more. If the speaker is not going into the corner, this might be the better choice. This speaker just seems to hold up better with the bass, even if like you put it into like the middle of a room. So basically, if I was to hook this up right here and play it, this sounds better here than this sounds better. This sounds better up against the wall. But this also sounds okay up against the wall, just that I think there's more flexibility. And if the music that you're playing is within the specifications of the bass, then this might have more bass than this. So what I'm saying is, let's just say the bass frequency for what you're listening to is somewhere from, let's say 70 hertz to 120 hertz. This is going to sound like it's fuller and has more bass than this. But if the bass frequencies are down in, let's say, the 40 hertz range or the 30 hertz to 40 hertz range, this probably is going to have a little bit more bass sound because it's rated lower. Okay, just because it's rated lower. But here's the catch. I think that this needs a pretty powerful amplifier. So I believe the minimum that they rated it at was a 60 watt amp. I wouldn't go near this with a 60 watt amp, and I wouldn't go near this with a 60 watt amp either. For either of these speakers, the 120 watts, 125 watts that I have, I feel like that's probably the minimum. Maybe if the amp is a much higher quality, a very expensive amp, and it's only putting out 100 watts a channel. So let's just say the amp is like a $3,000 amp. You have a $3,000 amp, but it's only putting out 100 watts a channel. Hey, you know what? It might be great. If your receiver or your amp is $500 and it's putting out 100 watts a channel, I would say probably stay far away from these speakers because these speakers need power. And in particular over here, remember, this one woofer is what your receiver is powering. I mean, it's also powering this, but this one woofer is going to be moving these two passive radiators. So if the receiver doesn't have good power, the speaker is it's just not going to sound right. As far as the volume goes, I think that they were both pretty consistent. So what I'm saying is at lower volumes, and then as it became louder, both of them I think sound better at that mid-range to kind of higher volume level than at a lower level. I don't think I pointed out how this sounds. This is very top heavy. Okay, this speaker is very top heavy sounding. So basically, what I find I'm hearing is this. My eye is always going to this. So pretend this isn't even here. My eye is going right here because this is the mid range, this is the treble, and this is a lot of bass. So this speaker is very top heavy sounding, and it also sounds like I feel like I've turned on one of those processing modes on my receiver, like concert hall, studio mode, one of those type of processing, because it just has like this interesting wider sound to it. Okay? This has a pretty wide sound because of this tweeter as well, but this tweeter kind of sounds more like it's doing something like this, like it's a little bit more like fluttery sounding, whereas this just sounds like it's just kind of going like this, a little similar to a horn tweeter sound. Over the years, listening to horn tweeters, I never found them appealing. But I'm not saying this sounds like a horn tweeter because it doesn't. But it does have a similarity to it. It does have a similarity to a horn tweeter. It doesn't sound like a horn tweeter speaker, so it's kind of like an in between. That's what I'm saying. I personally don't care for horn tweeter speakers. Anytime I've listened to them, I always found them to be very ear fatiguing. I don't find this to be ear fatiguing. This sometimes, it might be a little ear fatiguing. It just depends. If it's in a room where there's carpeting, again, and it's off in the corner, stuff like that, I don't find it to be ear fatiguing like if it was sitting over here playing. Okay. Also with the grill on, I think that the grill just helps to take a little tiny bit of that edge off of the tweeter. So again, that's something that you might want to experiment with. As far as movies go, I mean, it's really going to be it's really a matter of taste between these two. But again, there's also a price difference. I think because both of them do well with music, I think that the sounds that I heard from movies to me pretty much sounded okay. It just depends on what you want. If you want a speaker that's softer sounding, this is definitely it. If you want sharper sounding, this is it. Okay? Now sometimes with music, I'm just going to back up a little bit. Sometimes with music, some things I listened to on the monitor didn't sound so good. Everything on the KEF sounded good. Everything on this just sounded very even. Okay? Like a lot of speakers that I listened to, where anything that you put in, any type of a song, any type of a CD, it doesn't matter whether it was recorded in the 1970s or it was recorded a few days ago. You kind of know what to expect from the speaker. I found that there was times with the monitor where I was like, what happened here? So is it the recording, or is the way the monitor is translating the sound just not as appealing for me with that certain, music that I was listening to? The idea for you always, when you purchase a speaker, listen to all your favorite tracks. Listen to all the music you enjoy. Really sit down with it. But of course, first give the speakers, and I feel like a minimum of 15 hours of just listening to music, of playing music through them to really loosen up those cones. Preferably 25 hours. If you could get to 40 hours and then really pass judgment, even better. But typically, you want to give them some play time, so don't take it out of the box and then be like, oh, this sounds terrible, and then throw it back in the box. Try to give it some play time. That's really important. Probably the last thing that I want to point out is both of these speakers have some nice width to them. Okay, so they have some nice width, they have some nice depth, and that'll give you some additional options if you did want to put some kind of a small bookshelf speaker on top of them, or a Dolby Atmos speaker on top of them, to kind of use as a height channel. Or for example, if there's a pair of bookshelf speakers that you personally enjoy and it kind of matches well with it, you want to listen to music out of those bookshelves sometimes, but you want to use these more for movies, and you have a receiver like the Onkyo RZ840, where you could easily flip between the speaker pairs throughout the room. You could enjoy the music coming from the bookshelf speaker and then enjoy this for movies, or sometimes enjoy this for music. Whatever you want to do with it, it's nice that there is some space on top of it. So that's the last thing I think I wanted to point out. If you happen to own these speakers, or you have any questions, please post it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your experience with each of these, and also the amplifier that you have hooked up to them, because I am kind of curious as to how they would sound with different components. Home theater, home audio in general, it's such a mix and match game of trying to match the right speaker with the right receiver with the right source unit. So just always keep in mind when you're out searching for what you feel is perfect, because regardless of what I say or what hundreds of other people say, if everybody loves a certain speaker or a certain amplifier but you don't like it, it's no good. It's no good to you. So it always has to sound good in your environment. It has to sound good to your ears, because we all have different hearing as well. So just keep that in mind. And thank you for watching, everybody. Please hit that subscribe on the way out. Thank you.